Let's bring on Will Carroll. Will, how you doing today?
Hey, I'm doing great. Certainly better than Orioles fans recently. So it's been a tough run this year. It's tough to watch. I've got a lot of friends in that organization. I think highly of their medical staff. So seeing how this has gone, especially recently for Bautista and Rutschman, it's just tough to watch.
Yeah, there's a couple angles I can go here, but let's start with this. The perception where everyone wants to look at and say the Orioles are so snake bitten. There are injuries around all of baseball. Yeah. In your mind, do you think that this is the Orioles are the only team dealing with this? Is it a higher number, or do you kind of see that this has been a trend throughout Major League Baseball here over the last few years?
It's been a trend around baseball for a long, long time. I think the question is whether or not this is a trend for the Orioles, because you can make a difference in the injuries, just the sheer number of injuries you're going to have. What can you prevent? What can't you prevent? Look, there's probably going to be some number of them. I can't say zero is impossible because it's been done. If you Google Gary McCoy, he did it with a team in Taiwan. It is doable. And so if you do the right things and reduce the injuries you can, you see things like pitchers getting hit by comebackers. And doesn't it feel like that's happening a lot more? Or Trammell running into the fence last night. Those kind of things are going to happen. No medical staff can stop that. But arm injuries, we can reduce those. Hamstring injuries, all these lower leg, we can reduce those. Why have we seen a 60% increase year over year with oblique injuries in the last 3 years? The Orioles, yes, the injuries are up this year. Are they snake bitten? No, it's probably a little bit of luck balancing because they've been so good over the last 3, 4, even 5 years. 2020 throws all the stats off when we start talking about larger numbers. But they have been so good. One of the top 2 or 3 teams in 23 and 24, if I'm not mistaken, in terms of dollars lost and days lost. So it's unfortunate, but not uncommon to just see a little bit of luck balancing there.
Yeah, and I'm glad you gave that perspective, too, on oblique injuries. And coming from someone that had an oblique injury back in 2019, I was in high A at the time, Will. They stink. They suck. But you're right, the increase of an oblique injury, back in the day, when my members of the family were playing back in the 70s or 80s, 90s, that term was not used as much. Training, what you do in the off season, and the intention that guys are doing both with their practice reps and the game, et cetera, you name it, everything's more intensified. So in this case, you mentioned arm injuries. So let's go back to that.
Yeah.
I don't know if, unless the game is going to be changed, that this is going to be a dramatic drop. But before we get into Felix, what is one thing you specifically would argue or like to see people focus on to try to keep a pitcher on the mound for a full 162?
Well, you don't have to do all 162. I'd settle for 32 starts.
30, 35. I'd expect them to be available for a full year. Yes.
I've got to be pedantic. I'm sorry, Ryan. This is one of those things where I think there's a lot of things we could do. And so my first answer would be, God, let's do anything. Anything has to be better than this. The second is, if we really do look at what kind of forces these guys are putting on their arms, the changes that have come in the game, these guys are bigger, they're faster, they're stronger, they're throwing harder, they're swinging harder, everything. So there's just more force in the game. So we have to figure out, how do we deal with that force? We've literally gone to all gas, no brakes in most of these situations. With a lot of these oblique injuries, these guys are twisting so hard and twisting so fast that they pull the other side because it can't stop them. They're out of balance. They're working on the 6-packs. Nobody does 8-minute obliques. It's just not a sexy muscle. So with pitchers, the first thing I would do is get serious about workload management. Load management has kind of become a negative term in the NBA because it means people are sitting. But with this, it should be simple. We should say, we all look at our phones all day and see that battery gauge go down. All we need is a battery gauge for the arm. Why don't we have that? Well, we do. We have things that we could use. There are wearables. There are things that the medical staff can do to help with recovery. There's tons of things we could do. But let's go and do something as simple, perhaps, as weightlifting. If I wanted to lift 300 pounds on the bench press, I'm not just going to go jump in there, strap 300 pounds, and hope for the best. I'm going to work my way up.
Mm-hmm.
You'll probably go in there, just pop it on there. But
naturally,
any other weightlifting thing, any other technique, you're going to start somewhere and work your way up. So why aren't we starting at 75 pitches, 85 pitches? Somebody does that. Let's move them up to 95, 105, 125. We used to have guys who would regularly go 140, 150 pitches not that long ago. Why? Well, because they were throwing. They were the kind of freaks. We can't compare people to Randy Johnson and Nolan Ryan, but there's some of those out there that could safely do more and more. You can't say those guys weren't throwing hard, because they were. They just weren't throwing hard on every single pitch. So I think there's some very simple things we could do. There's some really technical things we could do, but I would start there.
And who's to say you speak for yourself, Will, when it comes to the obliques, the sexy obliques. I saw Zach doing 8-minute sexy oblique exercises here before we started today, right?
Man.
Yeah, every Thursday, actually. Just missed it, Will.
Zach.
Every Thursday at 2:30, Zach's doing his sexy oblique sets. So you just missed it. But it is
I'm sorry if 8-minute obliques was an advertiser or something.
Yeah. Oh, no. It might be.
That might be. Ooh.
Merit clubs. Hey, there you go. Merit. Hey, we're in the fitness. That can be a part of the fitness test next. 8-minute obliques. But I'm fascinated with this, Will, because I think you hit the nail on the head with the intensity that pitchers are now putting into almost every single thing that they do before they go on the mound and then when they're on the bump, right?
Yeah.
And it's the power pitching style versus even the finesse. Knowing when you need to rear back and have a little extra. I've talked to John Smoltz about this. Greg Maddux, I know, was probably the most precise pitcher in baseball history. You can make the argument where he didn't throw the hardest. I'm sure he could run it up there at times, but his was, I'm going to be very technical. Now we're seeing a lot of guys, power, and my power, I could throw it as hard as I can, try to spin it or throw whatever pitch, and I can get the result I'm looking for, strikeout or weak contact. Felix Bautista then fits that mold right there, right? Power arm. He can throw 100 right down the dish, right in the middle. And, hey, good luck. It's a hard pitch to hit. Then he's got the splitter, which with that action makes it tough. So from your perspective here, Will, with a guy like Felix, where do you think it went wrong with the labrum and with the torn rotator cuff?
Yeah.
And also, I'm curious then, do you think that he can be that same type of pitcher then moving forward into 2027 would be my guess and beyond?
Let's take those two things separately, and let's start with what's going on with him. I mean, first off, we've seen him. It starts with the genetics. My God, he's literally a mountain of a man. Mm-hmm. If you're out there looking like that, people expect you to be a power pitcher, and he absolutely was. But with all that power, you have to have two things. You have to have stability and the ability to stop the arm. The rotator cuff is functionally the brakes of the arm. When you're throwing that hard going forward, the rotator cuff is back here saying, no, don't keep going. You need to stay here with me. Inside the shoulder here, where the shoulder and the head of the humerus are here, that kind of thin cup, the labrum goes inside here and kind of acts sort of as a gasket. It's all about stability. So he has lost the brakes and the stability in his shoulder. Neither of those is good. Both of those is really bad. The fact that it came after an elbow injury is going down the kinetic chain. And, Washington isn't too far from you guys. So you'll remember Steven Strasburg. He had an elbow, he had a shoulder, he had a neck injury, then he had a lat injury. It was going straight down the kinetic chain. I was like, I hate to predict this, but he's going to have a back injury next. What did he have? Lower back injury. Luckily, none of those were terribly serious. He came back from. For Felix, this is another kinetic chain. So he's going to have to figure out how to deal with the forces. He's going to have to, in rehab, build up those brakes, make the muscles. You can't build up a labrum, though there is a new German study on regrowing cartilage that's really interesting. So he's just going to have to strengthen everything else. So he's going to have to get in the weight room. He's going to have to work with the rehab specialists and the athletic trainers and make sure that that shoulder is stable first and then deal with the mechanics second. Is he going to get back to 100? I don't know. We've got a grand total of one guy who's ever thrown 100 in the major leagues and hasn't had a major injury. And we don't know why Aroldis Chapman is the exception. Everybody else, gone. The arm just can't deal with that. But we're getting faster and faster. We're seeing guys in high school throwing 103. So this isn't stopping. We're going to see 110 before 2035. And I think it gets up around 118 down the line. We're not far from it. Certainly when we were seeing guys throw 89, 90 and not having to throw hard every pitch, it was nice. I mean, fans in Baltimore will remember this. And I will tell you when it changed. It changed when Mark Belanger wasn't the shortstop anymore and Cal Ripken Jr. was. All you had to do was see those two together. Look at their stats. Belanger, man, you could toss a cookie up to him. He's not going to hit it out. Cal, probably going to hit it out. I was going to say hit the warehouse, but that wasn't there then. So it's one of those things where the game has changed and continues to change. For Felix, I think he can come back. I think the best predictor here is Felix. He came back from Tommy John surgery like most people do. I don't think he has the same odds. I think it's 50-50. But everybody told me he was working hard. He sure looked good when he was healthy. So I hope he's healthy again.
Yeah, he proved when he is healthy enough, he can be dominant. It's still there. Now the process, and I know you know this, Will, and for our audience, the hard thing is going to be, can you mentally continue to show up each day and try to put your body in a position to have success? And then if you do everything right there, then you got to hope that your body's going to hold up. Will, you talked about the kinetic chain. Can it go the other way? Grayson Rodriguez is my perfect example. Grayson in 2022 was trying to get up to the bigs, hurt his lat initially. He's now had multiple lat injuries. And then it led to shoulder. Now it's kind of gone down to the elbow. That's right exactly with what you were talking about.
Yeah, his is a little more focused because, I mean, anytime you see a lat injury, it's spin. Why are we seeing more lat injuries? Because guys know what their spin rate is, so they're trying to change it. They're trying to alter it. They're trying to spin it harder, spin it faster, spin it in certain rifle spin directions. So it's just more work on the lat. I was actually talking to I don't want to say old time pitcher because it was the 2010s, but he was like, I didn't even know I had a lat. I knew the ball spun. I knew I was putting spin on it, but we didn't know this stuff. So we didn't think about it. These guys think about it. We saw the article the other day on Paul Skeens looking back at the vectors every pitch. It used to be we'd scoreboard look to see if we could hit 90 when I was playing, but and I didn't. But now they're looking to see vectors and spin rate and exit velocity and all these other things. So again, I think with Grayson, he's got to fix his mechanics. He's got a muscle that they're having to literally stitch back together, and that's tough. I mean, hope nobody's about to go to dinner, but take a steak, cut it raw, please, and then try to stitch it back together. It's tough, and it's not going to heal. It's not the same thing, but that's what a doctor is doing for Rodriguez's lat, is very literally trying to stitch back together a piece of meat.
Oh, man. Yeah, I'm glad I ate before and my food digested. I was getting a little bit of a visual, but I love the breakdown of it because every scenario is different. Some are similar, but these are the realities of what pitchers specifically are having to deal with in baseball in 2025 and beyond. So, Will, I appreciate all the answers, and you've been doing this for so long. That's why you were a great person to talk to. Before I let you go, do you of all the years, is there one situation that always sticks out to you? I mean, we're talking about decades you've been around and seen the game. Is there any injury that till this day you sit there and go, that one?
Oh, yeah.
What do you got for me?
It's not a specific one. There was a Red Sox pitcher, I'm blanking on the name, but it's the comebackers. Comebackers scare me because somebody's going to die, and I know that. And luckily, it hasn't happened yet, but these guys are bigger and we're seeing it more, and somebody's going to get hit in the head and die. There was a little leaguer here in Indiana this is almost a decade ago, that took one to the chest. It stopped his heart. He died. It was the same sort of thing as happened to DeMar Hamlin. So those scare me. The thing that ticks me off about those is that pitchers could do more. We saw a little bit of protective hats. There were liners that they could put in, but they were hot. They had padded hats, but they're big gazoo looking things. A pad over the chest for kids is mandated below 12. So I think there's just so much more we could do. But because pitchers want to do the same things they've always done, we see quarterbacks that don't want to change to better helmets. Even though they've been concussed, obviously, Aaron Rodgers. It's a situation where I think pitchers and baseball could do more, because maybe it's not one of these major leaguers. Maybe they're fast enough and have quick enough reactions that they can get out of the way, but the little leaguers can't.
Man, that is the reality. And when you just mentioned earlier, and it's crazy when you said 105, 106 that pitchers could possibly throw. 118 is what you said at one point in the next 20 or 10 years.
Yeah.
But what comes in, you make contact, comes right back out. I'm with you that I'm shocked that there hasn't been more tragedies in a good way, right?
Yeah.
In a good way. But that's the danger that we're going to continue to face here moving forward. And the game's going to have to continue to evolve too. So I'm curious how it all goes. But Will, where can everyone find all of your work, what you're doing, what you're up to, in case they want, or if they, maybe you're giving a seminar on how to strengthen the oblique?
Yeah, we could do that. No, you can find me at undertheknife.substack.com. It's $5 a month, but there's a lot of free stuff there, so you can check it out, where I talk about these injuries. I'll have a lot more detail on Felix Bautista.